Okay, buckle up, everyone, because this time we're diving into a pretty hot topic.
Oh, yeah.
Hydrogen engines?
Definitely heating up.
Are they the future? Are they going to be competing with EVs? I mean, we've got these reports.
Big time.
Toyota's making some moves, and then we've even got investors talking about living power grids and...
It's interesting, right? Like,
Yeah.
because on one hand, you've got everyone going all in on electric,
Right.
but Toyota's kind of like,
Pumping the brakes.
yeah, like maybe not so fast. Their president even said we can't just limit ourselves to EVs.
Yeah, he did. He used the term, what was it, the silent majority or something?
Right, right. Like there are a lot of people out there who aren't quite sold on electric being the only way forward.
Yeah, and what's interesting is Toyota's actually going kind of two directions at once. So they're developing a hydrogen combustion engine, a V8 no less,
With Yamaha, no less.
with Yamaha. Crazy.
That's a statement.
That's a statement, but they've also got the Mirai, which is a fuel cell car.
Right, so they're hedging their bets, which is kind of smart when you think about it. They're not putting all their eggs in one basket.
It's interesting, though, this whole hydrogen combustion versus fuel cell thing.
Yeah.
Because I feel like a lot of people, they hear those terms and they think it's the same thing.
Oh, for sure. It's easy to get them mixed up.
So in a nutshell, what's the difference?
Okay, so picture a regular gas engine.
Okay.
But instead of gasoline, it burns hydrogen. That's hydrogen combustion.
Oh, okay.
Big difference. Instead of spewing out CO2, it makes water vapor.
So potentially way cleaner
Way cleaner.
for those gearheads out there who want that.
That rumble.
That sound, that feel, right?
Exactly. That's a big part of why Toyota's interested. They know some people just aren't ready to give that up.
Right. But I mean, it can't be all sunshine and rainbows, right? What are the downsides?
Well, no tech is perfect right out of the gate.
Hmm.
One thing to watch out for is NOx emissions. We're talking about nitrogen oxides here. Not great for the environment.
That's a good point. NOx is nasty stuff. We don't want to trade one pollution problem for another.
Exactly. But the good news is that researchers are already working on ways to deal with this, like fancy catalytic converters and stuff.
Okay, so they're on it.
Yeah. It highlights that no technology is perfect from day one, but with some ingenuity and effort, we can overcome those early hurdles.
And speaking of hurdles, Toyota's got a pretty ambitious goal for hydrogen vehicles in Europe and China.
Ambitious might be an understatement.
By 2030, they want 200,000 on the road.
200,000. Now think about that for a second. We're talking about a huge jump from where they are now. Like, that would need a ton more hydrogen fueling stations.
Oh, yeah.
And a big shift in how the public sees hydrogen.
So you're saying either Toyota knows something we don't,
Right.
or, they might be a little too optimistic.
It'll be interesting to see how it all plays out. But let's get down to brass tacks.
Yeah.
How do these hydrogen engines really stack up against electric cars?
It's the million-dollar question, right?
It is. And honestly, it's not as simple as saying one is just better.
Okay.
They both have their strengths and weaknesses. Take refueling, for example. Hydrogen has a clear advantage there.
Oh, yeah.
Remember that Toyota Yaris GRH2, the hydrogen-powered one?
I do. It was a beast.
Total refueling time. 1.5 minutes.
That's insane. Compared to even the fastest EV chargers.
It's a game changer. Especially if you're the kind of person who hates waiting around at charging stations.
Or if you just forget to plug in overnight and then
Remember that.
you're scrambling in the morning. But, okay, speed aside, what else?
All right, let's talk about weather. Because believe it or not, your car's battery cares about the weather.
Okay.
Those lithium-ion batteries, they don't love extreme temperatures.
Oh, right.
But hydrogen, much wider operating range, so no more range anxiety in the middle of winter.
I can see the commercials now. Hydrogen, your card winter savior.
Right. But on a serious note, it's a legitimate advantage, especially as we think about a future with more extreme weather events.
Absolutely. Now, we've got to talk about resources, right? Because EVs, they rely on lithium and nickel for those batteries. And we've been hearing a lot about potential shortages.
Oh, yeah, that's the elephant in the room. And those shortages could lead to price hikes, which nobody wants.
So is hydrogen the answer to that?
Well, it has the potential to be. It's not like hydrogen is completely without its own resource considerations, but it does offer a potential alternative, especially if we can nail down that green hydrogen production.
Okay, that makes sense. Now let's talk about the elephant in the driver's seat, the driving experience itself.
Ah, yes. Because driving isn't just about getting from point A to B, right?
It's an experience. And EVs, they're known for being quiet.
Silent, almost.
Which is great, but
Yeah.
some people miss that roar of the engine, you know?
That visceral feeling. And Toyota gets that. They're actually engineering their hydrogen V8 to have a distinct, sporty sound.
Really?
Oh, yeah. They're even tweaking the exhaust system to get the acoustics just right.
Wow, they're really going all in on that whole experience.
They know their audience. It's smart because it bridges the gap between the familiar and the new.
It's like a nod to the past as we move towards the future. And you know what? It's not just about appealing to car enthusiasts either.
Right. One of the reports we looked at pointed out how the fact that these hydrogen combustion engines are mechanically similar to gasoline engines could be a lifeline for mechanics.
Oh, that's a good point.
Right. Because they wouldn't need a whole new set of skills to work on them.
It'd be a smoother transition for the workforce and keep those skills relevant.
Exactly. It's about making sure everyone benefits from this transition, not just the tech companies.
That's a really important consideration. I hadn't even thought of that.
But Toyota's not the only one betting on hydrogen, and combustion isn't the only game in town.
Okay, so let's talk about the bigger picture here. Who else is jumping into the hydrogen arena?
Well, BMW is dipping their toes in. They're exploring both hydrogen combustion, like Toyota, but also fuel cell technology.
Interesting. Anyone else?
Hyundai and Nikola Motors are all about those heavy-duty hydrogen fuel cell trucks,
Yeah.
trying to make trucking greener.
Okay, so it's not just about passenger cars then. We're talking about potentially cleaning up some of the biggest polluters out there.
Exactly. And it goes beyond that. There's Zero Avia. They're developing hydrogen-powered planes.
No way.
Yeah. And Airbus is right behind them with their own zero-emission program, aiming for 2035. Hydrogen's a big part of their plan.
Wow, it's amazing to think about how far this technology could go. We're talking about potentially transforming entire industries.
Absolutely. It's a real paradigm shift.
It is, but we've got to be careful about something. Not all hydrogen is created equal.
Oh, you're preaching to the choir there. The way we produce hydrogen makes a huge difference.
Okay, so riddle me this. What's green hydrogen? I feel like I hear that term thrown around a lot.
Right. So the most common way to make hydrogen right now, it involves natural gas and releases CO2.
Wait, so not so green after all.
Not really, no. That's why we need to talk about green hydrogen. Green hydrogen is made by splitting water into hydrogen and oxygen using renewable energy.
So like solar and wind power?
Exactly. The gold standard, totally clean fuel.
Hmm.
But it's more expensive right now.
Of course. So how do we get the price down?
Well, there's blue hydrogen, which still uses natural gas, but they capture the CO2 emissions.
Okay, so it's a bit of a compromise, but it could be a stepping stone.
Exactly. And then there's pink hydrogen, which uses nuclear energy, and even turquoise hydrogen, which is a whole other thing.
Wow, a whole rainbow of hydrogen. So how's someone supposed to know they're getting the clean stuff?
That's where things get tricky. We need better labeling, clear standards, maybe even something like those food labels that tell you exactly what you're getting.
So transparency is key.
Transparency is key. Consumers need to know what they're buying, and we need to hold producers accountable.
Okay, so we've got our different shades of hydrogen, and it's clear that how we make it really matters. But even with the cleanest hydrogen, there are still challenges.
Oh, absolutely. Roadblocks galore. Like, for starters, we don't have nearly enough refueling stations.
Right, that's a big one. You can't expect people to switch if they can't even fuel their cars.
Exactly. We're talking about a huge investment in infrastructure here. And then there's the cost. Green hydrogen is still pretty pricey compared to fossil fuels.
Yeah, new tech always is.
Right. But look at solar panels. They were crazy expensive once, and now they're getting cheaper all the time.
That's true. So there's hope for hydrogen yet.
There's definitely hope, especially as we get better at producing it and the technology improves. And governments can help too, with things like tax breaks and incentives.
Okay, that makes sense.
Right. Make it more attractive for people to choose the cleaner option. But there's one more big one we can't ignore.
Okay, let's hear it.
Safety.
Oh, right, the Hindenburg.
Exactly. That's what everyone thinks about.
It's a valid concern. I mean, hydrogen is flammable, right?
It is, but the technology is light years ahead of where it was back then.
So how do we get that message out?
Education, transparency, showing people how these systems work, the safety measures in place.
We need to build trust. Speaking of trust, we got this pitch from Living Power Grid Technologies, and they are very gung-ho about hydrogen.
They are all in. They see hydrogen as a huge part of a cleaner energy system, not just for cars, but for everything.
Yeah, they're talking about storing energy, integrating renewables, even powering homes.
It's an exciting vision. But the big question is, can they pull it off? Well, they're putting their money where their mouth is, that's for sure. Millions invested in research and development, bringing in top talent, building infrastructure.
Okay, so they're serious about this.
Oh, yeah. But they're also smart about it. They're partnering up with other companies, research institutions, even governments.
Because they know they can't do it alone, right? It's going to take a village.
It's going to take a global village to make this hydrogen dream a reality.
Okay, so let's say they do pull it off. What does that future look like? Are we all driving hydrogen cars in this scenario?
I don't think it's going to be that simple. It's probably going to be a mix of technologies. Electric vehicles, hydrogen fuel cell cars, maybe even some other stuff we haven't even thought of yet.
So a more diverse transportation landscape.
Exactly. Different tools for different jobs, depending on your needs and what works best for your lifestyle.
I like that. A buffet of options for the eco-conscious driver.
That's a great way to put it.
Yeah.
But let's not get ahead of ourselves. We've still got a lot to unpack about the current state of hydrogen.
Oh, absolutely. What trends should we be watching? What are the big challenges that still need to be tackled? And what can we expect to see happening in the near future?
All great questions, and I think we've got just enough time to dig into those before we wrap up this part of our deep dive.
Perfect. Because I am ready to unpack those trends and see where this hydrogen highway takes us. But we'll save that for the next part of our deep dive. All right, so we've talked about the promise of hydrogen, but we know it's not all smooth sailing, right? What are some of those speed bumps we need to watch out for on this hydrogen highway?
Well, we've got to talk about green hydrogen production. It's the gold standard, sure, but it's got a way to go before it's powering everything.
It's like waiting for those flying cars everyone's hyped, but are we actually going to see it? So what needs to happen for green hydrogen to really take off?
We need to scale up production big time. And that means not only investing in the technology to make it
Those fancy electrolyzers.
exactly, but also making sure we've got enough renewable energy to power those things.
Because it defeats the purpose if we're making clean hydrogen with dirty energy.
Exactly. And we can't forget about the whole getting it where it needs to go part. Transporting and storing hydrogen safely and efficiently, that's another piece of the puzzle.
Okay, so we're talking about a whole new infrastructure here. Didn't the oil and gas industry have to deal with something similar way back when?
Good point. They had their own growing pains, that's for sure. I think one of the big takeaways from their story is that collaboration is key.
So we're talking about governments, companies, researchers.
Everyone. We need everyone on the same page, working towards the same goal.
It's like a giant puzzle. Everyone's got a piece.
Right. And speaking of pieces of the puzzle, we can't forget about the role of government. Those policies, they can make or break a new technology.
Yeah, we talked about carbon pricing earlier, making those polluting fuels less appealing.
Right, but there's more we can do, like incentives for people who buy hydrogen cars, tax breaks, subsidies, you name it.
Make it easier for people to make the switch.
Exactly. And it's not just about consumers either. We need to support companies investing in hydrogen tech, grants, loan guarantees, things like that.
Create that environment where innovation can flourish.
Exactly. But here's the thing about policies, they can backfire if we're not careful.
How so?
Well, we don't want to pick winners and losers too early, you know? Putting all our eggs in one basket is never a good idea.
So instead of focusing on just hydrogen, we should be supporting all kinds of clean technologies.
Exactly. Let them compete. The best solutions will rise to the top. And it's not just car companies that need to be on board with this whole hydrogen thing. What about the energy giants?
Right. The Shells, the BPs of the world, they've got a big role to play too.
Absolutely. We're already seeing them pouring money into hydrogen, especially for those harder to clean up industries.
Like steel making, right?
Exactly. Those industries are going to be tough to decarbonize, but hydrogen could be a game changer. Plus, these big energy companies, they've got the experience, the infrastructure, the know-how.
They're like the veterans showing up to the startup party.
Right. But we need those startups too, with their fresh ideas and disruptive tech.
So it's the perfect combination.
Exactly. Big players and startups all working together. But we can't forget about the human element here. We can talk about technology all day long, but if people aren't on board...
It's a non-starter.
Right. We need to get people excited about hydrogen, address their concerns.
Because at the end of the day, people choose what's practical, what fits their lifestyle.
Exactly. We need to make hydrogen the practical choice, the desirable choice. Show people how it can make their lives easier, cheaper, more convenient.
It's like selling anything else. Highlight the benefits.
Precisely. And maybe a little bit of marketing magic wouldn't hurt either. But let's circle back to those roadblocks for a minute. We've covered a lot of ground, but I'm sure there are some bumps we haven't hit yet.
Okay, so what else is keeping you up at night when it comes to hydrogen?
Well, we need to talk about standards, certifications. Remember how we said not all hydrogen is created equal? We need to make sure everyone's on the same page about what's green and what's not.
Right, because imagine pulling up to a hydrogen station and having no clue what you're actually getting.
Exactly. We need clear labeling, certifications, the whole 9 yards. Otherwise, it's chaos.
So basically, transparency is key.
Transparency is key for consumers, for businesses, for the whole industry to thrive. And it's not just about what's in the fuel, it's about the whole process. How is it made? What's the environmental impact? We need to be upfront about those things.
No more hiding behind vague claims of being green.
Exactly. We need to walk the walk, not just talk the talk. And be honest about the challenges, the risks. Sustainability isn't about being perfect. It's about constantly striving to do better.
Love that. Okay, so we're talking about big changes here, a whole new way of thinking about energy. But it's easy to get lost in the weeds. What's the big picture here? What are we really working towards?
We're talking about freedom from fossil fuels, a cleaner planet for our kids and grandkids, a future where energy is no longer a source of conflict but a force for good.
Now, that's a future worth fighting for. But how do we get there from here? What concrete changes can we expect to see in our everyday lives?
Now, those are the exciting questions. Let's dive into those possibilities as we wrap up our hydrogen deep dive.
All right, so we've talked about the potential of hydrogen, the challenges, the whole 9 yards.
The whole rainbow of hydrogen.
Exactly. But now let's get down to brass tacks. What does this actually look like in the real world? If hydrogen really takes off, what changes will we see?
Well, for starters, imagine pulling up to a hydrogen station just as easily as you find a gas station today.
Okay, I like that.
You fill up your car in minutes, and you're on your way. No range anxiety, no long charging times.
And a lot less air pollution, right?
Exactly. Our cities could be radically different. Imagine looking out and seeing a mix of electric cars, hydrogen fuel cell vehicles, maybe even a few hydrogen combustion cars for those who like that engine sound.
A car for every taste.
Exactly. But it goes beyond just the cars. We're talking cleaner air for everyone. Less smog, less respiratory problems, just a healthier place to live.
So hydrogen cities would actually be more livable cities. What about all those factories and industrial areas? Can hydrogen make a dent there?
Absolutely. Heavy industries are tough to decarbonize, but hydrogen can play a big role. We're already seeing pilot projects using hydrogen for things like steel making and cement production, replacing those fossil fuels with something much cleaner.
Wow, that would be huge. So from our cars to the air we breathe to the products we use, hydrogen has the potential to touch so many aspects of our lives.
Absolutely. And here's another big one. Energy storage. Remember how we talked about renewable energy being intermittent?
Yeah, like the sun's not always shining.
Right, so hydrogen can be used to store that energy when it's abundant and release it when we need it.
Like a giant clean battery.
Exactly. So even when the wind's not blowing and the sun's not shining, we can still have clean energy flowing.
That would solve one of the biggest challenges with renewables. What about public transportation? Could we see hydrogen buses or trains?
Absolutely. Imagine hopping on a hydrogen-powered bus that glides silently through the city, leaving nothing but water vapor in its wake.
No more diesel fumes. That would be incredible. Okay, so we've covered a lot of ground here, but let's zoom out even further. This isn't just about individual cities or even countries, right?
You're thinking globally.
Exactly. How would a hydrogen-powered world change things on a geopolitical level?
Now, that's a really interesting question. Right now, the world is heavily dependent on a few key players for fossil fuels.
Which creates a lot of tension and instability?
Exactly. But hydrogen, especially green hydrogen produced domestically, could change all that. Countries could become more energy independent.
They wouldn't have to rely on others for their energy needs.
Exactly. Less dependence on those volatile global markets, fewer conflicts over resources. It's a whole new ballgame.
A cleaner, more stable world. But let's be realistic. Even if it's all positive on the surface, there are always going to be downsides to big changes like this.
True, we can't just assume everything will be rosy. There are definitely things we need to be cautious about.
So what are the potential downsides? What should we be watching out for as we move towards this hydrogen-powered future?
Well, one of the biggest concerns is making sure the transition is fair for everyone. What about the people who work in those fossil fuel industries?
That's a great point. We can't just leave them behind.
Absolutely not. We need to make sure there are opportunities for retraining, for new jobs in the hydrogen sector. We need to support those communities that are most affected by this shift.
So it's not just about the technology. It's about how we manage the transition in a way that benefits everyone.
Exactly. And that requires careful planning, smart policies, and a real commitment to social justice alongside our environmental goals.
It's about creating a future that works for everyone, not just a select few. That's a powerful message and a great note to end our hydrogen deep dive on.
It has been a fascinating journey, that's for
It
sure.
really has. And a huge thank you to our expert guest for guiding us through this complex and rapidly evolving landscape.
My pleasure.
And to you, our listeners, thank you for joining us on this hydrogen adventure. Keep those minds curious, and we'll see you next time for another deep dive.